It's August. I'm back. How are y'all doing? We got things to discuss. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. Had a couple days where I was unable to make a video. Sorry about that, but I've got some interesting things to talk about today, as it's now August and people are looking ahead towards Gamescom, Nintendo's demos there, and what the heck is going on with Nintendo and dates. And I've got some nuggets here that I think you're going to want to pay attention to, because I've seen people start to talk about, like, ooh, is the General Direct coming soon? Is Nintendo going to be announcing release dates for this stuff soon? What about the games that have been shown but don't have dates yet? What about the first party? What about the third party? And I want to give you my take based on what I know and based on what I've seen happen in the last 6 weeks. Obviously, we talked heavily about the partner showcase, check. Then we talked heavily about an indie world, and I told you that was happening, and check. Told you that there was going to be some sweet stealth drops, and UFO 50 came out, check. We're all good. Kit and caboodle has been confirmed from what we've talked about thus far. I mentioned that it was a 3-phase plan, and I'll tell you right here that the third phase that I'm talking about, the big General Direct, is not happening in August. Okay, now is there a chance for a smaller Direct in August? Well, the Mario 40th anniversary doesn't really kick off till September, so probably not. That leaves you with a Metroid Prime 4 game-specific Direct, or perhaps a Kirby Air Riders Sakurai Presents type Direct. Those two things could, I suppose, drop, but I'm guessing they won't, just based on when I believe those games are releasing. It seems like at this point, Metroid Prime 4 is probably going to be the November game, and that would mean that they would have plenty of time in September to show it off, and they don't need to drop it in August. Similarly with Kirby Air Riders, I don't know when that game's coming out, if it's going to be a December title, if it's going to be moved to January or February, how they're going to space that out, but I can't see that one coming out before Metroid Prime 4, given that we've seen virtually nothing of the game. So then it kind of goes to, what about the third-party titles? What about the third-party games that were shown off in the initial Switch 2 Direct that have not got a date yet? I'm talking mostly about the heavy hitters in Elden Ring Tarnished Edition and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, it is my belief and my guess that those two games are going to get dates sometime around Gamescom. Now, my thought process here is that putting them in the next General Direct is a lot of redo and overkill. Putting them in the next General Direct also means that they are holiday season games, assuredly. They're not being shown off at a September Direct and then coming out early October or late September. There will be some, spacing there, and I believe that Nintendo and Bandai Namco and Square Enix have discussed this. They know what date they're targeting. It doesn't necessarily need to be tied to anything else, and they probably like to get in a gap. All right, a gap would be a great place, and I think getting out before the holiday season is something that they'd like to do. Now, if you're trying to get out before the holiday season, you probably want to announce ASAP. So we've got Gamescom coming up in Europe, where we know Nintendo is going to have a big booth with a lot of demos, including Elden Ring. And then we've got PAX West, where we know Nintendo will also be, which doesn't yet have a list of demos, but it would not be surprising if they had the exact same list of demos, or maybe a very similar list. So you've got both the Gamescom weekend and you've got the PAX West weekend where announcements could be made. Now, those announcements could be made at the show. Those announcements could be made at some sort of Jeff Keighley fest if he's got like an opening night live type presentation. Those announcements could be made via Nintendo. Nintendo did heavily feature both those games, and they got like sort of the Nintendo talking heads voice segments. So specifically for Final Fantasy, I feel like Nintendo will be very much a part of that. For Elden Ring, the Tarnished Edition, I think Bandai Namco could just pop that out when they want, and maybe they will tie it to Gamescom to have sort of a big newsworthy moment, even though it would be very newsworthy for Switch 2 owners if they knew that Elden Ring Tarnished Edition was coming soon. So the way I kind of look at this is like, okay, Phase 3 not happening right now, not happening in August. Could there be a Nintendo presentation in August? There could be, but we're very heavy on Nintendo presentations lately, and the games that could have presentations are kind of like the further down the line games, in my opinion, of what's been shown. But what needs to get dated is this third-party stuff. So the way I sort of see this going down is Nintendo has a pretty present Gamescom, given that they have a booth, given that they have demos, given that they have unreleased demos. And so you're going to get a date around Gamescom, or 2 dates around Gamescom, and then you got PAX West again, where you've got a decent Nintendo presence, and you've got them hopefully showing off a decent amount of demos. And then we can move into September, and then we can start thinking more about the first party stuff, but I would be very surprised if we did get like a Metroid Direct sometime this month. Remember, we just had 2 pretty much back-to-back, 2 weeks in a row, and they gave you a long list of third parties, Although strangely, it felt like the biggest third-party games weren't really there. So you got to ask yourself, are those big third-party games being saved for a general direct, or are they being saved for the individual companies to announce them? And then the wild card is Nintendo just doesn't care, and they just announce them on Nintendo Today or on X/Twitter/YouTube. I think you got to look at the timing, and you got to look at how Nintendo double dips. Yes, they do show things off in sort of like their quick sequences, right? Like, just because they showed a game in a past direct doesn't mean it can't pop up in the next direct in one of their like quick sizzle reels. But Elden Ring and Final Fantasy VII Remake, to me, are tentpole titles for the Switch 2 that show, like, this is why Switch 2 is different. Like, that's a flashing red light for people who know what Elden Ring is, who know what Final Fantasy is, and who are like, okay, these are big games. These are games that I've played before, or my friends have played. These are games that were previously not possible on the Switch 1, and so they make a big deal. And so I don't think they're sizzle reel worthy games. I don't think you're going to see like, oh, Elden Ring is out October 2nd in a sizzle reel at a general direct, because it probably deserves a bigger moment, and Bandai Namco, at the very least, wants a bigger moment for it. Maybe Nintendo does, but at least Bandai Namco will be like, okay, we want this to be the focal point of something, and it's definitely not the focal point if it's thrown into a sizzle reel. The likelihood that Nintendo double dips on a game with a dedicated segment is pretty slim. They don't often like to repeat titles, and if they do, like I said, it's usually like one time you get focus, one time you get shoved in the sizzle. I don't think we're going to have to wait that long to see at least one of the release dates. So I'm saying August gives us a release date for one of the big two third parties that we're waiting for. August doesn't give us much from the first party front, although I could see just a stealth drop of a date. Now, what date would it be? I feel like Metroid Prime 4 is going to be saved for some bigger fanfare. I feel like Kirby Air Riders hasn't even shown gameplay. Perhaps Hyrule Warriors or the Splatoon spin-off could get dated depending on when they're coming out. If Hyrule Warriors is a winter title, and to them winter means February, maybe not. If Splatoon Raiders is something that's coming out in 2025, then sure, date that. If that's a smaller package, like what if that is a $50 game? We don't know. It's got the Splatoon IP, it's probably $60, probably $70. But regardless, those are the types of games that I could see getting announced soon. Otherwise, I think this month is going to be heavily focused on their show presentation at the tail end of the month, on the Kirby game releasing at the tail end of the month, and then, you know, getting the gears turning and the gears revving for a very big September. Now, we've seen some people talk about, oh, could they have multiple directs in September? Could there be 2? Could there be 3? Could they have a general direct, a Mario 40th presentation, and a Metroid Prime game-specific direct? They could. September could be a very big month, and you have to think, like, Nintendo does have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Okay, the Switch 2 is very important, and I've said this in a past video where it's like, just because they're not talking about it doesn't mean it's not there. Like, there's no way Nintendo started off this generation, reportedly delayed the generation, have a better lineup of games, and then just comes out with nothing. Just because they haven't revealed it yet doesn't mean they're not sitting on a ton of juicy info, a ton of juicy releases, and a pretty quick cadence of when these releases come out. So I do think you're going to see a very big September. Will it be like this miracle 3 direct thing? I don't know. I feel like that's asking a lot, and I feel like Nintendo 3 directs in a row is quite a bit. I would see them maybe doing 2. Like if they announce a Metroid Prime 4 date in a general direct, then they could give that game its specific direct closer towards release, right? If it's like a November 17th launch, early October feels like a great time for a Metroid Prime 4 direct. But right now, I think all eyes are kind of on Gamescom to see what the third parties do. And I wouldn't really expect much out of Nintendo, except for the Drag Drive stuff that you've played, the Drag Drive release that's coming soon, and then the Kirby and the Forgotten Land DLC/Switch 2 edition upgrade coming at the end of the month. I always want to call it Starcross Lovers. I think it's Starcross Worlds, but I'm actually very excited for that. I think that's going to be the sickest Switch 2 edition because it's basically a DLC expansion that we've wanted and been waiting for. Now, my baby kitties are hungry for their dinner, so I'm going to go feed them, but hopefully I've filled you up with enough info for you to think about and for you to take into the rest of August and kind of have expectations for how things are going to go. But let me know in the comments down below, when do you think Nintendo will pop up next with a presentation? Do you believe that they'll date one of their first-party games? Or do you think a third-party game, one of the big ones, is going to get dated first? And is it going to happen at Gamescom? Is it going to happen at PAX West? Is it going to happen separate, independent of all of that? It's really a wild card in terms of how the information gets conveyed, but it will get conveyed. Like, these games are coming out. They will be out. People will buy them and play them, and Nintendo Switch 2 will continue its momentum. That's not something I worry about at all. Like, there's sometimes people that freak and say, like, oh my gosh, is the Switch 2 dead in the water? No. They're just slow rolling it for whatever reason. They feel it's best. So in the meantime, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoy these videos, and until next time, love you lots. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Switch Force, out.